He had 30 days to father an heir or lose everything. She needed a way out of debt. What began as a cold transaction for survival becomes a slow, forbidden unraveling of hearts. But time is running out, and love was never part of the deal. Please subscribe and leave a like for us. It means the world to us. Also share this video to your friends and loved ones, and turn on post notifications so you don't miss future videos from us. Thank you as you do so. Sit back and relax as we dive into the story. Rain lashed against the towering windows of the Smith penthouse, casting a silver hue across the marble floors. Thunder echoed faintly in the distance, muted by thick glass and wealth. At the center of the opulence sat Alexander Smith, CEO of Smith Industries, heir to one of the most powerful financial empires in New York, and a man currently cornered by a clause written by a dead man. He stood at the bar, his knuckles white as he gripped a tumbler of scotch. His suit jacket hung loosely over the back of a bar stool, and his tie was loosened just enough to hint at disarray. His jaw clenched as his legal advisor droned on through the speakerphone. Alexander, the will is airtight. Your father made it explicitly clear. If you don't have a direct heir within 30 days of the reading, full control of Smith Industries passes to your cousin. Alex exhaled sharply through his nose, his eyes narrowing as he downed the scotch in one fluid movement. That smug parasite, he muttered. Elliot wouldn't last a month running the company. He's a tabloid waiting to happen. Nevertheless, the voice continued, this is the final binding amendment. It's not just about the child, it must be yours. Biological. You have until midnight on the 30th day. I'm aware, Alex snapped. The line clicked off. Silence returned, save for the patter of rain and the ticking of the oversized wall clock. He stood there, frozen, the weight of legacy, control, and obligation pressing down like a vice. Love? Marriage? He scoffed internally. Those were fairy tales people told themselves to escape loneliness. He didn't need love. He needed an heir. Down the hall, Claire Johnson tightened her grip on the medical kit in her hand. She had paused, halfway to delivering his evening blood pressure medication, when she heard the call. Her heart pounded in her chest, not because she'd meant to eavesdrop, but because the words were too surreal to ignore. An heir? In 30 days? Or lose everything? She swallowed hard, then forced herself to continue walking. She knocked softly on the study door, waiting for the gruff come in before entering. Claire stepped into the room with the calm professionalism she always carried. She wore navy blue scrubs, and her dark hair was pulled back into a tight bun. Her face was plain, beautiful in a quiet way, with tired eyes that had seen too many double shifts and bank statements filled with red numbers. Blood pressure check, she said simply. Alex didn't respond right away. He was looking out at the skyline, rainwater racing down the glass like veins. Finally, he held out his arm, and she wrapped the cuff around it. You're tense, she noted, more an observation than a concern. I'm always tense, he replied curtly. Claire didn't push. She monitored the device, scribbled the numbers, and packed it all neatly away again. But before she turned to leave, he spoke again. Have you ever believed in something so little that you had to fake it to survive? She paused, her back still half-turned. Her first instinct was to deflect. But something in his voice, something raw, cut through her usual barriers. Yes, she said quietly. He looked over at her then, truly seeing her for the first time since she'd arrived a week ago. Their eyes locked, and for a moment, the air grew dense with unspoken truths. What did you fake? He asked, curious despite himself. Claire hesitated, then gave a tight smile. Hope. She left the room before he could ask more. That night, in her guest suite on the east side of the penthouse, Claire sat cross-legged on the bed, the soft hum of city life seeping through the tall windows. Her phone buzzed. Another late notice. Her student loan balance stared back at her, $137,000 and counting. The hospital had cut her hours. The landlord was already threatening eviction. Her mother needed medication back in Ohio. She glanced toward the direction of the study, her mind racing. $137,000 versus the problem she had just stumbled upon. An heir in 30 days. She'd seen weirder things in hospitals. Sperm donations. Surrogacy deals. Elite clients making offers behind closed doors. Was this any different? Yes, she told herself. But no, another voice countered, it wasn't. Her stomach twisted. She didn't sleep that night. Not from fear. From decision. The next morning, dressed in her uniform and sipping coffee she could barely afford, Claire waited until Alex stepped out of his elevator. Phone in hand, crisp suit, expression unreadable. "Mr. Smith," she called, her voice steady. He looked up. "I know how to solve your problem," she said. He raised a brow, but didn't stop walking. "I'll carry your child," she continued, walking beside him now, her voice low, controlled. "No love, no relationship, no marriage. Just a contract. In exchange, I want $500,000. Alex stopped walking. Silence stretched between them in the middle of the hallway. His eyes bore into her, calculating. Not angry. Not shocked. Just curious. Like she'd just proposed a new business model. "Why?" he asked. "Because I need the money more than I need my pride," she said. And with that, she left him standing there, speechless for the first time in years. Alexander Smith didn't sleep that night. Not because he couldn't. Because he didn't want to. He sat in the dim light of his private library, surrounded by floor-to-ceiling shelves filled with first editions and rare manuscripts. Yet none of them could explain what had just happened. Claire Johnson's voice echoed in his head like a riddle he couldn't solve. "I'll carry your child. No love, no relationship, no marriage. Just a contract. In exchange, I want $500,000. It wasn't the offer itself that disturbed him. It was the way she said it, measured, unapologetic, eyes steady, as though she were asking for nothing more unusual than a shift change. He hadn't expected to respect her for it. But somehow he did. The next morning came cloaked in silence. No rain, no thunder. Just stillness. Claire arrived in the dining area as usual, carrying his morning supplements and blood pressure kit, her steps precise. She set them down without comment. Alex folded his newspaper, studied her for a moment, then spoke. "Was it a joke?" Claire didn't flinch. "Do I look like I'm joking?" He leaned back in the chair. "You understand what you're offering, right? This isn't a game. This isn't cheap. I don't care if you change your mind later, I won't. Once this starts, you finish it." "Understood," she replied. "You'd really sell your body to me for a price?" he asked, voice low but cutting. Her expression didn't waver. "I'm not selling my body. I'm offering a solution. You need an heir. I need money. This isn't sex work, it's strategy." He studied her like a new investment, calculating the risk, the benefit, the exit strategy. Then he stood, motioned for her to follow him. They walked through the penthouse in silence, his pace steady until they reached his home office. It was sterile, modern, glass and iron. Cold like its owner. He opened a drawer, pulled out a leather folder, and tossed it onto the table. "Standard surrogacy contracts," he said. "I had Legal Explore options 2 days ago. We'll tailor it." Claire approached the table but didn't sit. "I'm not going to be some hidden name on a birth certificate. I'm not disappearing after this." "I never asked you to," he replied. "You'll carry the child. You'll stay here for health monitoring, privacy, and control of the narrative. Once the child is born, we draft custody, sole legal rights to me. You'll be compensated in full after birth." "No," she said sharply. His eyes lifted. "No, I want a portion up front. 50,000. Enough to clear my loan before I'm too far along to work." She stood straighter. "The rest after birth, as agreed." Alex stared at her. She wasn't bluffing. Her body was still, but her voice had steel in it. "And what if you run off with the money?" "Then you'll make my life hell," she replied. "We both know that." A faint smirk flickered across his lips. Not humor, approval. "You're not afraid of me. I can't afford to be." They stood there, two opposites, power and need, wealth and will. Something unspoken passed between them, a deal forming, not just on paper, but in atmosphere. A kind of dangerous balance. "Fine," he said. "We'll sign tonight. Legal will bring a draft by 8. She nodded. I'll start moving my things into the guest wing. No, he said, turning back toward his desk. You'll move into the East Suite, closer to the medical quarters. It's not negotiable. Claire hesitated, then gave a curt nod. As long as there's a lock on the inside. There is, he said, without turning. By nightfall, 2 attorneys sat across from one another at Alex's custom glass conference table, redlining clauses and sipping expensive bourbon. Claire sat between them, eyes scanning each page carefully. She didn't pretend to understand every term, but she asked enough pointed questions to earn reluctant respect from the legal team. A notary witnessed the signatures. When the final page was signed and the pens were capped, Alex spoke to her directly. There's one clause I need verbal agreement on. Claire lifted her eyes. There will be no emotional entanglements. No expectations. No delusions. You don't fall in love with me. I don't pretend to fall in love with you. Clear. Her throat tightened, but she nodded. Crystal. Sex is functional, he added. Not romantic. Agreed. Claire felt heat crawl up her neck, but held his gaze. Agreed. You'll attend all medical checkups, allow a physician of my choosing, and submit to fertility treatments if required. I'll do what's necessary. Good, he said, rising to his feet. Claire stood too. When do we start? Alex looked at her then, fully. Not as a nurse. Not as a woman. As the vessel for his future. Tonight, he said quietly. If you're ready. She took a slow breath, nodded. I am. That evening, Claire stood in front of the mirror in the East Suite's en-suite bathroom. Her fingers trembled as she loosened her bun, hair falling around her shoulders in soft curls. She didn't wear lingerie, just a simple cotton slip that fell to her thighs. Practical. Unseductive. This wasn't about desire. But her stomach still fluttered. She stepped into the bedroom, dimly lit by the soft glow of recessed sconces. Alex was already there, shirt unbuttoned, sleeves rolled to his forearms. His eyes swept over her, clinical, reserved, but something in them flickered. Neither spoke. He stepped forward and gently touched her wrist, as if testing her temperature. Her skin burned. I won't hurt you, he said. I'm not afraid of pain, she replied. I know, he said. He kissed her, not hungrily, not softly, just deliberately. And as their bodies met, they both silently agreed to one thing. This was business. It would stay business. Nothing more. But somewhere in the back of Claire's mind, as she lay beneath the man who would father her child, one dangerous thought took root. What if that wasn't true? The East Suite became Claire's new world, a world of silence, luxury, and invisible lines she was constantly aware of not crossing. She woke the next morning in linen sheets that smelled faintly of cedar and something distinctly male. The other side of the bed was cold. Alex was already gone, likely retreating to his own room or to the glass and steel sanctuary of his office. The silence between them wasn't awkward. It was intentional. By the end of the day, the rules were established, not written on paper, but spoken like oaths, sharp and clear. Rule 1, separate bedrooms. What happened between them would not evolve into cohabitation. The night before had been a means to an end. Efficient. No cuddling. No lingering touches. When it was over, Alex had pulled on his robe, nodded once, and walked out without a word. Claire had sat up in bed, staring at the space he'd vacated. She hadn't cried. She didn't regret it. But she didn't sleep much either. Rule 2, no personal questions. They wouldn't ask about pasts. No talks about first heartbreaks or favorite books. Alex didn't want to know about her childhood, and Claire didn't ask about the cold shadow she saw pass over his face whenever someone mentioned the word father. He kept himself sealed like a vault, and she didn't knock on the door. Rule 3, medical procedures only with mutual approval. A private OBGYN had been arranged, Dr. Lena Hartford, a discreet professional whose only clientele wore cufflinks worth more than most cars. Her visits began the following week. Claire endured fertility scans and blood work, all with Alex observing silently in the corner of the room, arms crossed, unreadable. He didn't speak during the appointments, but he never missed one. Rule 4, No emotional entanglements. This one lingered in the air like smoke. Spoken aloud one night in the kitchen over tea. Claire had made chamomile. Alex preferred black. They sipped in silence until he finally looked at her, his voice low, controlled. "I need to say this plainly," he began. "So there's no misunderstanding." Claire turned to face him. "This isn't going to turn into something it's not. I'm not interested in a relationship. I don't believe in it. I don't trust it. I don't want it." She nodded once. Understood. But it wasn't entirely the truth. She wasn't in love with him. Not yet, but she was starting to see pieces of the man beneath the polished exterior. The way he left a glass of water on her nightstand without a word. How he ordered prenatal vitamins without being asked. How he spoke to his dog, an old golden retriever named Henry, with a tenderness he never gave to people. They fell into a rhythm, professional, practiced. Days started early. Claire spent mornings reading in the solarium, a room she'd never even seen before moving in. She began exercising with Alex's personal trainer, following a pregnancy-safe program. He arranged a nutritionist. She saw it as part of the deal. Nights, though, those were more complicated. Alex only came to her room when the ovulation tests said it was time. Always calm. Always focused. He didn't ask her how she felt. He didn't kiss her unless necessary. Their bodies moved together like machinery, efficient, precise. But sometimes, just sometimes, Claire caught a flicker of something in his eyes before he pulled away. She didn't ask what it was. She didn't dare. One night, after a particularly quiet dinner, Claire walked into the living room and found Alex seated at the grand piano near the window. She hadn't even known he played. His fingers moved over the keys, playing something soft, haunting. His sleeves were rolled to his forearms, and his brow was furrowed in a way she rarely saw. She stood there, quiet, hidden just beyond the frame of the archway. He finished, sat in silence for a moment, then looked up. "I didn't know you were there," he said. "You're good," she said softly. "I learned when I was a boy. My mother insisted." Claire stepped closer, the wood floor creaking beneath her. "Do you still talk to her?" He hesitated. "No. She left when I was 14. There was no bitterness in his voice. Just fact. Like he'd decided long ago not to bleed over wounds that never healed. Claire sat down on the armrest of a nearby chair. "That must have hurt." She said she didn't love him anymore. "My father." She walked away from both of us. "That was the last time I believed in any of it." Silence stretched. "I'm sorry," she said. He looked at her. "Why? You barely know me. Maybe that's why it's easy to mean it." He looked away first. Later that night, she lay in bed alone again. The contract was clear. The terms were sharp. But something was changing. It wasn't sex anymore, not entirely. It wasn't love either. But it was something in between. The quiet way he touched her shoulder after a doctor's visit. The fact he remembered she hated strawberries and told the chef not to include them. It wasn't romance. But it also wasn't indifference. And Claire began to wonder, what if these rules weren't protecting him from her? What if they were protecting him from himself? The moment the stick turned pink, Claire's fingers began to tremble. She stared at the tiny indicator on the pregnancy test, her breath trapped in her lungs like a secret trying to stay hidden. One line became two. Faint but undeniably there. Positive. The bathroom was silent, almost reverent. The marble countertops glistened under the vanity lights, but nothing around her sparkled like her mind did, full of noise now. 1,000 thoughts collided like hail on glass. She'd done it. The contract had been fulfilled. The embryo had taken root. Inside her, Alexander Smith's heir was growing. She placed the test gently on the counter, suddenly careful as if it were made of glass. Her hand went instinctively to her stomach. It was flat, unchanged, but she felt the shift. Something had changed. Everything had changed. Dr. Hartford confirmed the pregnancy that afternoon. Alex sat in the corner of the sleek private clinic room, clad in a dark suit, legs crossed, watching the screen silently as the doctor explained hormone levels, due dates, early prenatal care. His face didn't move when Claire's name was read out with the title Mother. His jaw stayed tight when the words viable pregnancy were spoken. But his eyes, they stayed fixed on the black and white monitor that showed a faint flickering dot, barely there. A life. His life. When the doctor stepped out to give them privacy, Alex stood and walked to the window, arms crossed, his back to her. Claire sat quietly on the exam table, the paper crinkling under her. "Say something," she whispered. He didn't turn. "It's done." His voice was low even, almost tired. She frowned. "You're not happy?" "It's not about happy." He finally turned to face her, eyes darker than usual. "It's about done. We're on schedule. You've done your part." The words hurt in ways she wasn't prepared for. She swallowed hard. "Is that all I am to you? A schedule?" He stared at her. "Isn't that what you signed up for?" Claire dropped her gaze. "Right. Of course." The board was informed that he now has an heir, and they told him that he would be summoned later to prove it. His lawyer confirmed to them that he has met the deadline. The tension hung between them like smoke for days. Alex became even more mechanical, almost retreating. He was still present. He ordered prenatal supplements, arranged weekly visits, replaced all the wine in the penthouse with sparkling juices. But he did it all without warmth, without comment. He checked in through his assistant. "Mr. Smith wants to confirm your cravings have been managed. Mr. Smith would like you to consider the prenatal yoga classes he arranged." He watched from across rooms but didn't speak unless necessary. But one evening, a crack formed. Claire was sitting on the couch, curled under a cashmere throw, the baby books stacked beside her untouched. Her back ached. She hadn't said anything, didn't want to seem weak. But the dull ache had grown, blooming from her lower back into her legs. She let out a small sound, a quiet whimper. Alex appeared almost instantly. "You're in pain." She blinked up at him. "Just sore. Normal." He didn't ask permission. He sat beside her, pulled the blanket away, and gently lifted her legs into his lap. Then, without a word, he began to massage her calves, strong, controlled pressure with his thumbs. She tensed. "I didn't ask you to." "You didn't have to," he said. His hands were surprisingly gentle. He didn't look at her as he worked, but his voice softened. "I researched pregnancy symptoms. Blood pressure drops. Circulation slows. This helps." Claire studied him. "You researched?" He nodded. "I don't do things halfway." She hesitated. "You could have hired someone else." "I didn't want someone else." It was the first time he said something that didn't sound like a line from a contract. And that night, when he left, she missed his hands on her skin. Not for the relief, but for the care. Things began to shift after that. He started joining her for tea in the evenings. No conversation at first. Just proximity. Then came the questions, slow, cautious. "Do you sleep well? Have you always hated pickles, or is this new? Do you want the music lower?" She found herself answering before thinking. Smiling. Laughing sometimes. One morning, she walked into the breakfast room to find he'd replaced all the French pastries with her favorite, banana nut muffins from a bakery 5 blocks away. He'd made a note in his phone the week before when she'd casually mentioned it. She didn't say thank you. He didn't need her to. One rainy afternoon, Claire wandered into the nursery. It was still under construction. Cream walls. Soft lighting. The beginnings of a forest mural painted on the far side. Animals in pastel tones, calm and soft. She hadn't asked for this. She hadn't thought about it yet. But clearly he had. She heard his footsteps behind her before he spoke. "Do you like it?" She turned. "You painted that deer?" "I sketched it. A contractor filled it in." She blinked. "Why a deer?" Alex looked away, then down. "My mother used to take me to the park. When she left, I stopped going. But I always remembered the deer." Claire studied him, her voice low. "Why are you telling me this?" "I don't know." His voice cracked, barely audible. "Maybe because you're the first person who actually listens." She didn't say anything. She just walked toward him. And instead of touching his hand or his shoulder, she stood close enough for him to feel that she was there. That night, he came to her room. Not for obligation. Not for ovulation. He stood in the doorway, hesitant. Vulnerable. "Do you want me to leave?" he asked. Claire got up from the bed and walked toward him slowly. No. And when he kissed her this time, it was different. No precision. No strategy. Just warmth. And something dangerously close to longing. Afterward, they lay in silence, tangled in the aftermath. Alex's voice broke it. This wasn't part of the deal. "I know," she whispered. Neither of them moved. Neither of them wanted to. And Claire, staring up at the ceiling, knew the truth with a slow ache. She was falling for him. And that meant everything was about to get harder. The rain came again, steady and cold, slicing across the city like it had something to say. Claire stood by the penthouse window, cradling a cup of peppermint tea between her palms. The mug radiated heat. Her heart didn't. It was fluttering, wild and unsteady beneath her ribs. Across the room, Alex sat behind his glass desk, eyes flicking between screens, fingers moving quickly across the keyboard. He hadn't spoken much that morning. Just a clipped good morning when she entered, and a longer glance than usual at her growing belly before he turned away. They hadn't touched in days. Not since that night. The night they stopped pretending it was just physical. The night he kissed her like he'd wanted to for weeks, like she was not a transaction, but a tether. Claire placed her tea down and stepped toward him. She didn't make a sound, but he noticed. He always noticed. "Can we talk?" she asked. Alex didn't look up. "You're about to tell me something that will complicate everything, aren't you?" She paused, stunned at how precisely he'd cut into the moment, like he already knew. "Yes," she said anyway. He leaned back, sighed. "Go on." Claire hesitated, then sat in the chair across from him. Her hands rested gently on her stomach, now gently rounding beneath the soft knit of her dress. "I didn't plan for this," she began. "You know that. I came here desperate. I made a deal because I needed help. I told myself I wouldn't get attached, that it was just a business arrangement, and once it was over, I'd walk away clean." He said nothing. She swallowed. "But something happened. I watched you change. I saw the way you softened. The way you started asking if I was eating, sleeping, breathing. The way you touch me like I matter." Her voice grew quiet. "And now I can't keep pretending I don't feel anything. I do. I care about you, Alex. I think I might be." "Don't," he cut in sharp. The word struck her like a slap, not in volume, but in finality. He stood from his desk slowly, walked toward the window, his back to her. His reflection glared back at him from the glass, clean lines, crisp cuffs, and cold, dead eyes. "You think you're in love with me," he said. "But you're not." Claire rose from the chair. "Why do you assume that?" "Because this," he turned, motioning between them. "This is artificial. You're pregnant. Your hormones are everywhere. I'm providing for you. You're safe here. You're confusing protection with affection." "No," she said, stepping forward. "I know the difference." "You don't," he snapped. "Because if you did, you wouldn't be risking everything we agreed on by bringing emotions into it." Claire's voice cracked. "You're the one who changed the rules. Don't twist this, Claire." "I'm not twisting anything." Her voice rose now. "You kissed me like it meant something. You held me like you didn't want to let go. You don't get to act like none of it mattered just because it scares you." He didn't respond. Claire took a breath, softer now. "Tell me I'm wrong, Alex. Look me in the eye and tell me I'm imagining everything." He did look her in the eye. And he said nothing. Silence roared between them. Claire stepped back. "That's what I thought." She turned, heart caving in her chest, and walked out of the office. Alex didn't follow. She packed that night. Not to leave immediately, but to prepare. Her decision was made. She would stay through the pregnancy. She would honor the deal. But once the child was born, she would go. She couldn't keep breathing in this limbo. This space where she felt everything, and he insisted on feeling nothing. She lay on the bed, surrounded by boxes she hadn't even touched since moving in. Her eyes drifted to the photo on the nightstand, a sonogram printed just days ago. The tiny heart still fluttering in grainy grayscale. Her hand moved to her stomach. "I'll protect you," she whispered, "even if it means walking away from everything." The next morning, Alex watched her from across the kitchen. She didn't meet his eyes. She didn't wait for conversation. She took her supplements, made her tea, and returned to her room without a word. For the first time in a long time, he felt the quiet ache of absence inside a room she was still in. That afternoon, he canceled his meetings. He sat alone in the nursery, staring at the half-finished mural. A deer half-painted, frozen mid-step. He remembered being 6, reaching for his mother's hand in the park, only to find it gone. A single breath later, and she had vanished. Weeks later, she called from California. "I'm sorry, sweetheart. I had to go." He had never forgiven her. Never trusted love again. Because love was conditional. Love walked away. Love gave you everything, and then left you holding nothing. So why now, with this woman, who came for money and stayed for nothing? Did he feel like the ground was slipping beneath his feet? Claire's absence became presence. When she skipped dinner, he noticed. When she closed her door, he stood outside it for 20 minutes without knocking. When she cried softly one night into her pillow, he heard it through the wall and did nothing. Because he didn't know how to fix it. Because if he opened the door, he wouldn't be able to close it again. 3 days passed. No conversation. No contact. On the 4th, Claire received a text from his assistant. "Mr. Smith has requested the transfer of the remaining balance be held until post-delivery, as per clause 7.1 of the contract. Please confirm you agree." She stared at it for a long time. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. She replied simply, "Noted. I'll honor the contract." She didn't sign it Claire Johnson. She didn't sign it at all. In his office, Alex stared at the message when it came through. And for the first time in his career, no, in his life, he felt like he'd won the battle. But lost everything else. Alexander Smith's world had never been so still. The penthouse buzz of corporate urgency was gone. No assistants trailing him with agendas, no back-to-back meetings, no thunder of phone calls demanding his power. All of it quieted. What remained was an expensive silence he couldn't fill. He wandered the halls like a ghost haunting his own empire. The woman who once occupied those spaces with gentle footsteps and quiet laughter was still under his roof, but she had become a shadow. She no longer left the door open. She no longer waited for him at tea. Her laughter, once effortless, was now extinct, and he had no one to blame but himself. At the board meeting that week, the room brimmed with tension. 11 men and women in tailored suits sat in rows like judges. Elliot Smith, Alex's cousin and corporate vulture, leaned forward from across the glass conference table, grinning like a man already sizing up the CEO chair. "You'll forgive me," Elliot said with mock politeness, "but we've yet to see any proof that the heir you speak of even exists. Your claim lacks documentation." Alex stared him down. "You're implying I'd lie under oath?" "I'm suggesting," Elliot said smoothly, "that your arrangement sounds unconventional. And this board is entitled to verification." Alex's jaw clenched. The board murmured. The lawyer seated beside him whispered, "We need her." Claire received the official request 2 days later. A letter, sealed in an envelope hand-delivered by Smith Industries legal counsel. A request for her presence at the final board vote, to visually verify her pregnancy and confirm her voluntary participation in the arrangement. She read it twice, then folded it and placed it in a drawer. She said nothing. Alex didn't ask her about it either. He knew better. But Alex's internal spiral had already begun. He no longer attended dinners. He canceled one of his quarterly investor meetings without explanation. Something unthinkable. When pressed, he barked at his executive assistant and left the building. That night, he drank alone in his study for the first time in years. The liquor didn't dull the ache. It only sharpened the memory of her silence, her eyes, her absence even when present. On the 7th day of that quiet war between them, he stood in the doorway of the East Suite. He didn't knock. He just stood there. Claire was lying on the bed, one hand resting over her now pronounced bump. reading a paperback she didn't seem to care about. When she saw him, her expression didn't change. He took a breath. "I saw the letter." She said nothing. "I don't want to force you." Claire marked her place with a receipt and closed the book gently. "You haven't forced me to do anything, Alex." "Not then. Not now. But I need you to come," he said, voice lower. "The board's questioning the entire legitimacy of this." She looked at him, finally. "And what happens after I show up like some trophy? What happens when the baby's born? Do I walk out the back door while you walk into your father's throne?" His voice caught. "You think I'd let you walk out the back door?" "I think you already have," she whispered. And for the first time, Alexander Smith was speechless. She lay back on the pillows. "You can have your company. I'm not stopping you." He left the room slowly, her silence clinging to his clothes like ash. The next day, Alex visited Claire's OB appointment alone. She had rescheduled for a different time and gone without informing him. But the staff assumed he knew. When he arrived, Dr. Hartford greeted him with surprise. "She already came through this morning," she said gently. "She looked well. Strong." She declined to stay long. Alex nodded, distant. "She's always strong." That night, he entered her room and found the closet half emptied. Drawers open. Suitcases stacked in the corner. And he finally broke. The next morning, he got in his car and drove. Not to the boardroom. Not to his office. To a small clinic in Brooklyn. A women's health center with cracked tile floors and donated art on the walls. He stepped inside, clearly out of place in a $3,000 suit, but no one turned him away. He asked for Claire. The receptionist raised an eyebrow. "You're Alex Smith?" He nodded. One phone call later, Claire emerged from the back hallway in a lab coat, clipboard in hand. Their eyes locked. She blinked slowly. "Why are you here?" He looked around. The women in the waiting room. The posters on the wall. The toddler on the floor playing with a broken truck. "This is what you're doing with the money?" he asked. She crossed her arms. "It's not your business anymore." "It is," he said. "It always was." "No. It was business to you. I was the deal." "No," he repeated, this time quieter. "I'm not angry," Claire said softly. "I'm proud of what we did. Of the child we're bringing into the world. But you made it clear there's no room in your life for love. So I made space for myself somewhere else." She turned to leave. "Claire," he said. She stopped. He exhaled. "I was wrong." Silence. "I thought if I didn't believe in love, I couldn't lose anything. That if I kept it cold, kept it sharp, I wouldn't bleed again." He stepped closer. "But I was bleeding the whole time. I just didn't feel it until you stopped looking at me." Her back still turned. "And now I can't sleep in my own house. I can't eat in my own kitchen. I can't breathe knowing that every room I walk into doesn't have you in it." Claire turned slowly. He looked wrecked. No tie. His shirt unbuttoned at the collar. His voice frayed. He moved toward her like a man stepping off a cliff. "I don't want the company without you. I don't want the legacy. I don't care about my father's name. I want you. And if that means giving all of it up, every dollar, every board seat, every power play, then fine. Take it." He choked slightly. "Just don't walk away." Claire stared at him, something fragile flickering in her chest. "Say it again," she said. He stepped closer, his voice barely above a breath. "I love you, Claire." Her eyes closed. And when she opened them again, she was already falling into his arms. That night, he didn't return to the penthouse alone. She came with him. Not as the nurse. Not as the surrogate. But as the woman who had seen the man behind the empire and chose him anyway. The final board meeting arrived like a storm, tense, gray, and poised to shift everything. Claire stood before a wall of windows in the Smith Tower conference room, a soft hand resting over her rounded stomach. At 7 months, her pregnancy had transformed her body into something unmistakable. Not just expecting, but carrying legacy. She wore a navy maternity dress, elegant, modest, powerful in its simplicity. Her curls were pinned back, her face bare of anything but resolve. The room was full. The board, the legal team, Elliot Smith with his smug smirk and diamond cufflinks. Whispers filled the air, speculations and judgments half swallowed by silk ties. Then Alexander entered. He wore no tie, no suit jacket, just a crisp shirt, the sleeves rolled to the elbows, and a stillness around him that quieted the room. He walked straight to Claire, offered his arm. She took it, and together they faced the table. The chairman, a pale man with a steepled brow, cleared his throat. "Mr. Smith. Miss Johnson. You understand the gravity of this appearance." Alex gave a single nod. "We do. And that today's vote will determine whether Smith Industries remains in your control or shifts to Elliot Smith, as per the stipulations of your late father's will?" "I do," Alex said again. Elliot leaned forward, eyes gleaming. "Then let's get on with it. Unless, of course, there's a last-minute change of heart or a scandal to disclose." Claire stood a little taller. Alex didn't look at Elliot. He looked directly at the board. "My father built this company out of fear. He believed love was a weakness, family a liability, and power something to be hoarded rather than earned. He believed that a man had to control everything, including people, to protect his legacy." There was a shift in the room. The air changed. "I believed that too once," Alex continued, "until I met a woman who didn't want my money, who didn't want my name, who offered me something more dangerous than anything I'd ever faced, truth, vulnerability, grace." He looked at Claire. She didn't blink. "I entered into an agreement with Claire Johnson to fulfill a clause in my father's will. But what happened after that was not part of any contract." The chairman frowned. "Mr. Smith, if you are confessing to a breach." "I'm not confessing," Alex said calmly. "I'm making a choice." He turned to Claire in front of everyone. "I choose her. Over this company. Over this board. Over legacy. I choose her." Gasps echoed. Elliot's expression twisted with disbelief. "I will forfeit my claim to the company today," Alex said, turning back to the table. "I'll walk away, take my name off every title, every share, every seat, if that's what it takes to have a life with her." Silence fell like snow. And then, "No," the chairman said. Alex blinked. "No." The old man smiled faintly. "We've been watching you, Alex. Watching you become your father. And more recently, watching you start becoming something else." Another board member, a woman with sharp features and silver hair, spoke up. "He built this company from the ground up, yes. But you're rebuilding it from the inside." There were nods. "We needed proof you could lead not with power, but with humanity," the chairman added. "That you could carry the Smith name without repeating its sins." The vote was cast. Unanimous. Alexander Smith retained full control. But he didn't celebrate. He just looked at Claire, like she was the only verdict that mattered. 2 months later, on a sunlit morning in late spring, Claire gave birth to a daughter. She was small, fierce, red-faced, and loud. Her cry pierced the delivery room like a trumpet, and when Claire held her for the first time, she wept, not out of pain but gratitude. Alex stood by the bed, eyes wet, his hand trembling as he touched the baby's tiny foot. "What do we name her?" Claire whispered. He looked at them both, and said softly, "Hope." The naming ceremony was intimate. No press, no spectacle, just a garden full of lavender and white linen, close friends, a few trusted board members, and one nervous man holding a velvet box in his pocket. Claire stood beneath an arbor, holding Hope in her arms, when Alex approached with that rare, hesitant smile he'd only ever shown her. "You once told me you faked Hope to survive," he said. She looked at him, gently rocking their daughter. "But now," he continued, "you've given it to me. For the first time in my life, I believe in something bigger than control. Bigger than legacy. I believe in you." He dropped to one knee. Gasps again. But Claire didn't react, not with surprise, not with theatrics. She just smiled like she'd been waiting for this all her life. "Claire Johnson, will you marry me? Not for a contract, not for security, but for love?" Tears welled in her eyes. She placed Hope in his arms, leaned down, and kissed him. "Yes," she whispered. 1,000 times yes. The guests cheered. But to Alex, the world fell away. There was only her, and the tiny heartbeat they'd created together. And in that moment, Alexander Smith, a man who once believed love was a threat, understood the only real power he ever wanted was holding him with both hands. 2 years later, the Smith penthouse had changed. Gone were the cold lines of chrome and marble that once defined it. The vast walls now held framed photographs, candid moments of messy love. Finger paintings hung beside oil portraits. One room had become a playroom, scattered with plush toys and wooden blocks, the pristine floors now happily scuffed by tiny feet. Alexander Smith stood in the doorway of that room, leaning against the frame in bare feet and a navy Henley. His hair was slightly tousled, and in one hand he held a stuffed giraffe that had recently been left in the kitchen sink. Across the room, Claire sat cross-legged on the carpet, her laughter bright as she built a wobbly tower of soft blocks. Hope, now a curly-haired, wide-eyed 2-year-old, knocked the structure down with a delighted shriek. "No survivors," Alex said, smirking as he stepped inside. Hope clapped and looked up at him. "Daddy again." Claire turned, smiling. "She's on a demolition kick today. I wonder where she gets that from," Alex muttered, sitting beside them. Hope immediately crawled into his lap and thrust a teething ring into his chest. "She's very persuasive," Claire noted. "She's a tyrant in princess pajamas," he replied fondly. They stayed like that for a while, tangled in giggles and toddler babble, the low hum of music playing from another room. It was messy. It was loud. It was alive. Alex had never known a house could feel like this. Later that evening, after Hope had been tucked into bed with 3 lullabies and a negotiation involving one more book, Claire stepped out onto the penthouse balcony. The city sparkled below, indifferent to the lives unfolding above it. But up here, the chaos had settled into peace. Alex joined her, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "Remember when you hated this view?" he asked, resting his chin on her shoulder. "I didn't hate the view," she said. "I hated how lonely it felt." He nodded, quiet. They stood like that for a long time, watching the city that had once been a battlefield become their sanctuary. Then Claire turned to face him. "We're not done, you know," she said. Alex raised an eyebrow. "With what?" "Living. Loving. Learning." She smiled, brushing his cheek with her fingers. "You're still healing." He looked at her with that same awe he'd carried since the day she chose to stay. "I'm healing because of you." Claire leaned into him. "You're healing because you let yourself love." They kissed, slow, familiar, certain. And somewhere inside the penthouse, Hope stirred in her sleep, safe in a home built not on contracts or inheritance, but on the fragile, fierce power of choice. We have come to the end of the story. I hope you enjoyed it. Leave a like and subscribe to my YouTube channel for more interesting stories.